Star Wars: The Clone Wars excels at showing us what the war on the ground was like for the Republic, depicting its horrors in an accessible manner. But the same can't really be said for one particularly important military class, naval crewmen. The only crewmen we really see in Star Wars: The Clone Wars are the helmsmen and the officers on the bridge and the engineers in the hangars. This does make sense. The Clone Wars isn't Battlestar Galactica, and the story simply wasn't about life on a warship. But that didn't mean those crewmen weren't there, and in this video we'll be discussing all the different roles that they played.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Venator class Republic Star Destroyer was a remarkable warship, and it required a crew of about 7,400 for one to be considered fully operational. And keep in mind, this is only people who were directly involved in operating the ship. The 2,000 clone troopers and 600 pilots stationed aboard the ship with a full complement aren't included in that number. Those thousands of crew members had a massive variety of different roles, ranging from basic maintenance and fighter repair to gunner coordination and tactical command. The majority of crew members on a Star Destroyer likely fell into the engineering category. Now, we've actually made a video about clone engineers before, including the ones who dealt with starfighters on vessels like this, so we won't go into detail on what they did, but it's fair to assume they made up a significant chunk of that crew population. Remember, the Venator was primarily a carrier, equipped to house around 500 fightercraft and gunships, not to mention walkers and shuttles, and so it's safe to say that at least 1,000 engineers were stationed in the hangars of each Star Destroyer, ensuring the vessel's war machines remained in good shape. But there were other engineering types stationed aboard warships as well. Your average deckhand probably fell into this category, as did maintenance workers, and they were likely present in large numbers as well. These crew members were mostly recruited, and they were much more important than you might think. When a vessel's shields fail and holes start getting blasted through the hull, someone's got to be on top of the mess, and that job usually fell to the engineers as well. Maintenance workers are often seen as little more than glorified janitors, but in reality, they were far more important than that. They mitigated the casualties incurred by damage to the ship, and they repaired that damage when the battle was over as well. The most skilled engineers on Star Destroyers were stationed in the ship's hot zones, the areas around the various reactors and hypermatter silos which were crucial to the vessel's continued operation. Their job was both vital and dangerous. They maintained the ship's most essential systems, and they ensured that battle damage didn't cause massive failures across multiple systems when it occurred. The stakes for such work were incredibly high, as failure would almost certainly mean death not just for them, but for hundreds, if not thousands of others as well. Another often overlooked category of crew members is the quartermasters. They actually did get the spotlight in one Clone Wars story, namely Jedi Trial, a novel about the Battle of Pre-Sitlin. As was emphasized in the novel, supplies are incredibly important for every fighting force, and the Grand Army of the Republic was no exception. While the GAR was easier than most fighting forces to supply because of its one-size-fits-all nature, quartermasters still had to keep track of literal tons of supplies, making sure that they were managed efficiently and properly stored. A similarly unenviable job was that of the staff at mess halls. This is not a job people regularly think about, and it's also a job which frequently went to droids, though it was still hard labor. At full capacity, a Republic Star Destroyer could be carrying some 10,000 beings, not all of whom were clones. Feeding them was not the easiest of duties, especially during wartime. Just like with the quartermasters, with whom they often worked closely with, mess hall staff had to figure out how to quickly and efficiently manage massive amounts of supplies to ensure effective distribution. Sounds like fun. There are a number of similar roles in this category as well, like medical personnel and armorers. Maintaining the armories on a Star Destroyer probably fell to the clones stationed there, who were frequently rotating between assignments and couldn't really be considered part of the crew, but there were likely permanent crew members who helped manage such things as well, like the Master at Arms. Medical facilities on Star Destroyers, as we've seen in the Clone Wars, were mostly droid staffed, but it's likely there are at least some organic personnel there to oversee them. Another crucial group on any warship is gunnery crews. Like any good ship, the Venator was quite flexible in how its guns operated. They could be operated directly from bridge consoles, automating most of the targeting process, or they could be operated in a weapons-free mode, in which each weapon's individual gunnery crews took over and picked their targets. Republic Star Destroyers had a variety of weapons ranging from heavy DBY-827 turbo lasers to 52 smaller point defense laser cannons. Each weapon on a Star Destroyer had its own dedicated team of gunners which varied in size depending on the weapon. For the smaller point defense guns, which were designed to independently and rapidly track and eliminate enemy starfighters, teams were usually smaller, with most members being involved in the loading and maintaining of their cannons instead of firing them. For the larger turbo lasers, teams were of course much larger, and each turbo laser had its own commanding officer who supervised a team whose members' tasks ranged from monitoring systems to targeting. Working in a gunnery crew was one of the most dangerous roles one could be assigned to on a Star Destroyer for a variety of reasons. Obviously, enemy vessels and fighters tend to target the guns on a ship fairly early in a battle, but there were other less obvious dangers too. For one, improperly maintained weapons could overheat and explode, killing their gunnery crews and likely other personnel as well. Another danger, which is considered even less, was the fact that gunnery crews often only had the hull of a ship between them and the vacuum of space. Another danger, which is considered even less, was the fact that gunnery crews often only had the hull of a ship between them and the vacuum of space. For the crews of flak guns, there was only a ray shield at some points. Even a minor hull breach could kill off gunnery crews who, unlike many others stationed on Star Destroyers, didn't have any decks between them and the hull when such breaches occurred. The most visible crew members and arguably some of the most important crew members were those stationed on the bridge, of course. Now, Venator class Star Destroyers had two bridges, one for helm and command and another for starfighter flight control. Additionally, there was a hangar command post at the far end of the ship's flight deck, which had a small command crew of its own to oversee hangar operations. No small task, mind you, on a ship with so many starfighters. The portside bridge served as starfighter control, and the men who served in the crew pits there were almost entirely involved in that. This meant monitoring comm chatter, contacting squadrons with updates about combat situations, and just generally coordinating the starfighters launched by the ship. For any starfighter force, this kind of coordination is essential, but this was especially true for the clone pilots stationed aboard Venators, as the fighters fielded by their enemies were all linked by a central computer. Starfighter controllers achieved a similar effect as these computers. The guys in the pits on the starboard bridge, on the other hand, were the helmsmen. They were the ones who actually piloted the ship, so to speak, controlling how fast the Star Destroyer was traveling, in which direction it was traveling, and pretty much everything else on the vessel. As far as active, non-maintenance operations went, the helmsman could basically run the entire Star Destroyer if need be, though this was far from optimal. There was one final class of crew members stationed on both bridges, clone naval officers. These guys managed communication, strategic deployment, and served as aides to the ship's captain, all very important roles. There were officers among most groups of the ship's crew, of course, but the kind of clone naval officers we see in the Clone Wars were really only stationed on the bridges and maybe in hangar command as well. They essentially served as extensions of the Star Destroyer's captain, allowing the whole ship to run smoother. So, that was our discussion of the various roles one could fill in the crew of a Republic Star Destroyer, but what do you think? Which of the various crew roles would you pick if you had your choice? Not counting being captain, mind you. Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And as per usual guys, just before you head off, there's a whole bunch of needy links in the description waiting for your clicks. So if you want to join the wider Geetsly's community, do please check out our Geetsly's gaming network, where you can play Star Wars games with other Star Wars fans such as our Roblox and our Gary's mod, our central Discord server where you can just have a chat with like-minded people, and the Patreon if you want to support the channel more than you already are by watching these videos and get access to a super cool and super secret behind the scenes Discord. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.